the first thing we want to do is open up courses and go to Introduction to CAD Modeling Skills. Scroll down, and you want to open the original model for this demonstration. So you download that and need to open it and have it for reference. So we're going to go look at that particular document. This is the Automotive Blocks passenger section. So let's go ahead and start to make that. So we're going to start a brand new sketch on a part. It's in English. So we can go ahead and make a rectangle. And that rectangle needs to follow the dimensions from that part. So let's go and look at what our dimensions are. It is 3.17 wide, 1.53 tall, and 3.17 deep. So when we make ours, let's go ahead, and it was 3.17. Enter tab, and it was 1.53. And we'll hit front to kind of zoom out, and we're going to hit E for extrude, and we're going to extrude that 3.17. So that gives us a box. I'm going to hit the home and get us out there. There's a lot of things that work better in 3D modeling, and fillet is one of those. I like to use it in the modify panel. And I'm going to put a fillet right there, but I need to go back and see what size fillet. So it's 0.3, and all the interior ones are 0.2. So we'll make that 0.3. So let's go out to the inventor and type in 0.3. And we'll make that 0.3. And this one, in an isometric view, you can get three of them very easy. But you can also get the fourth one if you just come over and click on it. You can use the cube to spin around if that makes more sense to you, but I like to just go ahead and do it without spinning around. So apply. So we now have that. Next we want to do the cutout section for the socket. So let's go ahead and start a new sketch. We're going to click it right here. And it's going to be a rectangle again. And I tell my students, get close, but make sure you don't have to be specific at this point. So we have it right here, and I want to make sure I don't click, make it constrained to anything. Let's go back and look at our document. Okay, it's 2.4 by 0.93, and it goes 0.57 back. So let's go back to Inventor, and I want to hit D for dimension. And we said it was 2.4 in the width, and the height was 0.93. But now I want to kind of make sure it's centered. Now the dimension on the drawing is incorrect because it only goes to 2 decimal places. It should have gone to 3. And if you use this dimension, it won't be completely centered. So let's just go ahead and use our geometry to take care of that. So what I'm going to do is project geometry, valuable tool. And that projects all of my geometry. Now I'm going to use some constraints. I'm going to use the horizontal constraint. I want this midpoint lined up with that midpoint. And I want in this orientation, now I have it completely lined up. So you can see it's fully constrained down here in the corner. So I'm going to finish sketch, hit E for extrude, and it wants to join, but we're going to make it a cut. And that cut distance was 0.57. And we'll click OK. Now it's time to put some more fillets. So go to Modify panel, and it was 0.2. So again, I'm not going to spin it around. I'm just going to let it select it for me and then hit apply and cancel. Now we're ready to do the top. Now I want to make sure I get my correct orientation here. So I want to see this end. So I want to make sure I get it right. So the front is over here. And that's going to be important when we go back and look at dimensions that we have for this section. We have this dimension, we have this dimension, and we know its depth of 0.107, and this dimension right here, 0.82, is important because it's not centered in that direction as far as depth, and that's because of the windshield. So let's go back to Inventor and let's make that rectangle. Now again, hit Sketch, click, Project Geometry is going to be our friend. So now we have that geometry. And I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to make my rectangle. Again, I'm not worried. I can put the rectangle way out here if I wanted to, because I can bring everything back. And then I know that it is 1.98 by 1.59. And I hit escape, and at this point I can kind of drag this wherever I want to. But I'm going to put it here. Usually I like it fairly close. It makes it a little easier. It's not amazingly important that I do that. But then again, I'm going to use my geometry. Now here's going to be a tricky part. I got to get that hit and escape to get out of that. If you'll notice, this is looks opposite because it's on the constraint, it goes up and down, but on this one it goes side. Remember, I see how I have the top spun? Watch that. It's an easy mistake to make, and students do it all the time. So now we're centered there. Now it says I need one dimension, and that dimension is that 0.82 from the front. So let me put that in. Now it's fully constrained. Hit E for extrude. Now extrude can work this way, but I tend to like to use it in isometric, so I kind of have a better orientation for me personally. Again, I want to cut, and it went down 1.07. Now it's time to fill it, so let's go Modify Panel, fill it. All the interiors were 0.2, so I can go ahead and pick all those without much effort. Press Apply. Again, you can use this cube if you prefer, and that takes care of those two sections. Next thing I want to do is go to that detail view, and I want to put this little notch in it. Now to do that, I need to look at the dimensions. It's 0.06 by 0.06, and it's 0.3 down. So let's go ahead and go back to Inventor. You can cut it from the side if you wanted to, but most of my students tend to cut it because the detail view comes from this view. That's the view that they most often choose. So that's the one I'm going to choose today. So again, Project Geometry is your friend. And then I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to go ahead and make me a rectangle. Now, whoops, I shouldn't have done that. See how I wanted to stick to that? You want to make sure you don't get any of these little lines like this because it thinks it wants to constrain to that. And we don't want that. And it's 0.06 tab by 0.06, and it went ahead and jumped to that, so we're good. I'll hit Enter. Hit Escape to get out of that. Now what I want to do is use my constraints. I want collinear. I want this collinear with that. And the reason I pick collinear is a lot of times students will draw real close but not on the line. So we want to make sure that we get that. So now I'm ready to go ahead and put my one dimension from the top. And if you recall, that was 0.3. And now that dimension it showed there did not stick, so I'm going to have to go back and put my dimension in there. Or I could just use the equal because I want this equal to that. Oops. It didn't like equal because it's trying to pick the whole line, so I'll just go ahead and type in 0.06 and hit Finish. Now I'm ready to extrude, so I'm going to hit E for extrude, zoom in. It picks join by default most times. So we're going to cut, and our distance is going to be all. I'll click OK, and now I have that cut in. Now I want that on the other side. I could go ahead and sketch, or I could have put in the original sketch, but we want to practice using planes, so I'm going to pick a plane, but I'm going to pick a mid-plane between two planes. I'm going to pick this plane and this side. You may have to revolve around with the cube, view cube, but if you're careful you can go ahead and select it like I just did. And now I'm going to use the mirror pattern. I'm going to mirror, and you can pick it right here. I tend to like to use the model bar because it makes sure easier to pick. Sometimes you have some hard things to pick. And then you're going to mirror the plane. And you can see it over here, so I click OK, and now that is done. Since I don't need this plane anymore, I'm going to click on it and turn off its visibility. Next thing I want to do is go ahead and put a little emboss T9 over here. So let's go ahead and pick Start Sketch, click, and the emboss uses 2D sketch of text. Everything 3D starts 2D. So I'm going to type in T9. Now what I do with my students, typically I haven't put their initials in here. It doesn't stop cheating, but it does slow it down a bit. So now I'm going to highlight that. If I decide I want to make it a little larger, I can use these default values, or I can just type in what I want to type in, say 0.25. Happen to be what I wanted that to be. I can make it bold. I can change the style of the pattern for the font. I'm going to keep it so it's something I can read. So go ahead and click OK. So there it is. And you can go back if you decide, and this happens a lot, if you hit escape, you double click on it and go back and edit that, and you might decide, you know, that was a little too big. I'm going to make it 0.125. So it's easy to change. Finish. And now I'm going to go up here and pick Emboss. I could do it with an extrude, but Emboss seems to know it wants text and works very easy with it. And it's 05. And I'm going to have it come out. I could have had it engraved in. And there I have my little T9. And if you decide, well, that's still a little aggressive, I don't like that, I can go back here by double clicking on it, or I could right click, edit, feature. I'm going to make it 2.5. That looks a little nicer. The next thing you want to do is color this. There's a couple ways to do that. If I click up here and I get this little wheel and I can go ahead and start picking my colors, I can zoom in. If I pick here, it's going to color everything, so I don't want to do that. That's why you zoom in. But let's zoom in, and then I pick my color. My school colors are purple, so I'm going to pick that. Now holding down the Shift key, I can pick multiple faces. So if I want to do that, and you guys see how you got to be careful with that. And then I can go ahead and hit the check mark, and that's done. Now if I wanted all of this done, I would have to hold down the Shift key and hit all the way around. You can see how that could be tedious and easy to make a mistake. If you decide you want the whole thing colored, just come over and click on the emboss, and it colors everything for you. Hit the check mark, and it's done. So that takes care of putting the emboss on there. And then last, I want to change the materials. So the materials that I want for this is going to be wood, and birch seems to be the one that looks closest to what we have. So now I have a nice little birch one with my little initials on it.